Hi, and welcome to Code Tutorials. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the Image Hotspots block, which is part of our key blocks for Gutenberg Premium plugin. Right now, we're on a page where we can see different examples of this block's use. The idea behind Image Hotspots is that you have the main image with icons or pins scattered across it. Then, hovering over a hotspot pin shows more information on that section of the image or what's shown on it. And you can use it for all kinds of things, from maps and panoramic views like this one, to products or wide-angle shots where you want to label all the components shown. Now, besides what you can do, there are different ways to go about accomplishing your goal. And that's where this block's many customization and stylization options get to shine. The main image display can vary in size, the pins can have distinct looks and colors, and the info text can appear in different ways in relation to the pin. That's all down to how you set the Image Hotspots block in the back end. And that's what I'm here to show you. Let's head over to the back end. I already prepared a blank page that I can work in, so now I just need to add my block. And there are two ways you can do that. The first is by clicking on this blue button here. It will open the block selection. You'll see all the blocks your site has. That includes everything you get with Gutenberg itself, as well as the key blocks collection, and anything else you may have added. You can easily tell the key blocks apart by their red icons. To start with, you'll see the premium blocks, and then you'll see the free ones. Now you can browse through this selection to find your block, then drag it over to the page to insert it. However, you can also insert a block from within the page. Let me close this. Within the page, click on this plus sign button. This will open the block selection where you have a search function. Simply start typing the name of the block you want, and when it appears below, just click on it to add. There. And this is what the Image Hotspots block looks like when it's just been added to the page. We have the placeholder image and 3 dummy hotspot pins with plus icons. To customize this block, we'll start with the image. Click here to delete the placeholder image, and then you can choose a new one. I have the one I want in my media library already, so I'll open that up. This is the one. Select. Alright, here we are. Now, we can see that my image is smaller than the default one, so one of the pins is now outside of it. We'll fix that within the item options. That's within the content tab where we are right now. So this is where we have the option to replace the main image and the options to adjust the pins. Each pin is a different item. You can remove an item by clicking here to delete it. Or you can add new items by clicking on this button here. Okay, I'll remove all items except the first one. I plan to customize it fully and then duplicate it so I can preserve the settings that I want to be the same throughout. Alright, I'm down to one item, and that's this pin here. Don't worry, it won't be staying there for long. Now, when I click on the item, it unfolds to reveal several options. To start with, we can replace the dummy text that accompanies the pin. We have 2 fields for that, the title and the subtitle. You can use just one or both of these fields. It all depends on the content you're sharing. For my design, I'll replace the title. Okay, there. And I don't plan to use the subtitle. Ordinarily, I would just delete it, but I'm going to keep it for a moment longer so you can see what the info box with this text looks like. As the options above the image cover it, I'll move my pin and then we can take a look. The options we have for adjusting the pin placement are the pin horizontal position. This option allows us to broadly determine the pin's horizontal position before we fine-tune it using the offset options below. The choice of settings we have here is left, right, and center. We also have the pin vertical position, where we can set if the pin will be in the top, middle, or bottom section of the image. Again, we can fine-tune this later. I haven't changed anything in either of these 2 options as the current settings suit me. So the current settings, left and top, have put my pin here. And it's not exactly labeling anything useful in the image, but it is a good starting position from which I can move it. I'll do that by adjusting the offset options. The first is the pin vertical offset, and we can use it to move the pin up and down. You can drag the slider here or input a value. I'll do the latter. And I want to use the percentages instead of pixels, as that will help the pin adjust better when the display is resized for other screens and devices. Okay, and I'll put 27 as the value. We can see the pin has moved down from its original position. And this has also made the content of the info box easier to see. I have my title, and the subtitle I left with its default dummy text. As I said, I'll be removing that shortly. But first, let me adjust the pin's horizontal offset, i.e. move it a bit to the right. I'll use percentages again, and I'll put 24 as the value. Alright, that has placed my pin here. My title saying camper area makes more sense now that the pin is over the right part of the image. Okay, I'll scroll back up now and delete the dummy subtitle text. Just erase it if you don't want to use it. And as you can see, the info box will adjust its size automatically. Okay, while setting all this up, I skipped one option, and that is the icon. This option lets us upload a custom icon that will serve as the hotspot pin. As you can see from this note above, the icon you use needs to be in SVG format. A bit of a spoiler alert. We are going to have the same type of option in the Style tab. Remember, this is the Content tab right now. The difference is, if you upload the icon within the Style options, all your pins will be replaced with the same icon. Whereas if you do that here in the Content options, you can upload a different icon for each item or pin. And that is why I'm going to leave this option and do my icon replacement later in the Style tab. Alright, that leaves just one item option that we haven't covered: fade into position. With it, we can choose where the info box will appear in relation to the pin. The settings it offers are top, right, bottom, and left. The default is actually top, and if we hover over the pin, we can see that the info box pops up above the hotspot pin. So that's the default setting. And if I switch that to top, we can see that nothing changes. After that, we have the right position, and it looks like this. Then we have the bottom position, that's this, and finally we have left, which looks like this. Alright, I'll set this back to default. Keep in mind, you can set this option differently for each pin depending on your image, section layout, and so on. Okay, with that, we've covered all the item options. However, there's one last thing I want to do for my hotspot pin before I start making other ones, and that is to replace the pin icon. Now, I'm going to briefly switch over to the Style tab for that, and use this field at the top to upload the replacement icon. So you can replace this with any SVG icon you like. However, I quite like the little plus sign icon, so I prepared something similar to replace it with. Open the media library, and this is it. Select, and here we are. The icon I have now is a bit bigger and bolder than the default one. This rounds out all the hotspot pin settings I wanted to make. Now that my first pin is complete, I can return to the Content tab and duplicate my first pin to create new ones. Okay, I have a second item that we can't see in the image because it's in the exact same place as the first item. But that's okay, I'll be adjusting its position settings alongside the content shortly. However, since we've already covered how that goes, I'll skip ahead so I don't waste your time. And here we are. I have 5 items in total, so my image has 5 hotspot pins on it. And that's the content taken care of. Before I move on to styling my element, I have one section left here. And that is the Advanced section, which contains the additional CSS classes option. This is where you can create a specific class for this element, and then you can use that class and refer to it when creating CSS that would style your hotspot image block. Okay, that's all for this tab. Moving on to style. So the topmost option is for changing the pin, which we've already done. And you can see the icon I chose for my pin here, and here, and here. Once you've set an icon, you can adjust how it will look, starting with its size. You can use a slider to set what you like, or you can type in a value. That's what I'll do. My icon size will be 15 pixels. And there it is. After that, we can change the pin color. You can use the slider to select what you like. I'm aiming for white. Okay, that's not quite it. I'll use the hex code input instead. I want plain white, and that's just 6 Fs. Alright. Following that, we have another color option, this one for setting the pin holder background. You can faintly see it here. The holder currently matches the dimensions of the icon, but I plan to change that. Still, let me set the color first as I know exactly which one I want. And I'll use the hex code input again to make my pin background a bright red. Now I just need to adjust the pin holder size. You can see how it changes when I drag the slider. But again, you can use the input field too. I'll set 47 pixels in mine. Perfect. After that, we have the pin holder border radius option. With it, we can curve the corners of our pin holder. You can do that for each side separately. For example, I'll put 10 pixels on the top, and then we can see how the top left corner got rounded out. So that's one side, but you can also set a value for all sides at the same time. To do that, just click here to connect the fields, and then input the value you want. I want my holders to be round, so I'll enter 30 pixels to get that look. There it is. Now I have these circular backgrounds that help make my pins more distinct. Okay, that's the first section done. The second one is for adjusting the info style, or the look of the info box containing the text relating to the pins. Here we can choose how the information will be displayed. The default setting is fade in, and when we hover, the info box fades into view. The alternative to this is the reveal setting, and with that one, the info box unfolds from the pin, a bit like a banner. Of course, it doesn't look that great now. I'd need to set the text padding and things like that if I wanted to use this. However, I plan to stick with fade in, and that's the type of display I'll be adjusting as we carry on. Moreover, with this type of display, I have these two additional options: the info position and the info with arrow. The first, info position, is a lot like the fade info position option we saw earlier in the content tab. It allows us to pick the placement of the info box in relation to the hotspot pin. We can see it offers the same settings: top, right, bottom, and left. I already set mine to be at the top when customizing the pin, and then I duplicated the setting throughout. We can see that here. But if you haven't set the info position already, and if you want it to be the same for all pins, then this is where you can take care of it with one click of the mouse. For example, if I switch this to right and hover over the pins, we can see the info box for them now appears on the right side. Alright, I'll put this back. And the second option we got was the info with arrow. It's enabled by default, and it gets this tiny arrow pointing back at the pin. It makes the info box look a bit like a speech bubble. Now we can disable that by switching the setting to no, and then the info box will look like this, just a plain rectangular box. I like using the arrow, so I'll enable it again. Alright. Next, we have the info offset from pin option. This allows us to move the info box closer to the pin or further away from it. Let me show you. A negative value brings the two closer, and a positive one puts them further apart. I'm going to set 24 pixels. And now if we look, there. The distance is measured from the icon, not the holder, to the bottom of the box. Okay, I set a larger gap just to show you, but I actually want the two to be closer together, so I'll put 11 pixels for the offset. And this is what the distance looks like now. After that, we have the info background color. This option allows us to change the color of our info box. I'll set something just to show you. Okay, and if we look, the box has changed. I'm happy keeping the default white setting, so I'll click here to reset the option value, and that's it. The original color is back. Alright, next we have the info padding option. It lets us adjust the space around the text within the info box. By doing that, we can indirectly adjust the size of the box itself. Let me demonstrate. I'll set 0 at the top to remove any padding I have by default. And actually, I'll do that for all sides but one. Then, if we look, the box is barely framing the text. There's only a bit of the original padding remaining on the left side, as that's the only one where I didn't set 0. All the other sides are right next to the text. Okay. let me clear this. I do want to have some padding, but I want specific values for my design, so give me a moment to input them all. I'll have 13 pixels at the top, 25 on the right, 13 at the bottom, and 25 on the left. Alright, this is the resulting look on the page. There's some room around the text content, and the text box is box-like once again. After this, we have the info border radius option, which we can use to curve the corners of the info box. And if we take a close look at it, we can see that there is some radius already there by default. The corners aren't sharp. You can increase or decrease that, of course. Say, if I put 20 pixels as the top radius, the info box will have an even smoother top right corner. However, for my design, I'll simply clear this as I want to keep the default values. Alright, it's back to how it was. By the way, it's up to you if you want to add a bigger radius for all sides, or if you want to set zeros in all fields, like so, to remove the radius entirely. If we look at the box now, all its corners are sharp 90-degree angles. Alright, give me a second to clear this. Okay, done. This brings us to the next section of the options, the info text style. This is where we can adjust the look of the title text within the info box. The options here include the title tag, which we can use to replace the default H5 tag with any of these in the dropdown. This is what the title looks like with the H5 tag, and I'm happy keeping it that way. Following that, we have the title color where we can set any shade we like for the title text. You can match it to your pin, holder background, image, anything you like. For my part, I want to make the text almost black. I have the exact shade in mind, so I'll enter the hex code for it. Okay, there. And if I check the info box, great, the color is there. After that, we have the typography settings. When I click, you can see that they include a number of different options for adjusting the title text. One of those options is the font family, where we can choose a replacement font for the title. You can scroll through the list or search for the font if you know its name. I know the one I want, let me just find it. Okay. Then we have the font size, if we want to change the size of the title text. I'm going to set 17 pixels for mine. We also have the font weight option, where we can select if we want our text to be normal, light, bold, or anything in between. I'm going to use the medium 500 setting for mine. And if we look at the info box, this is what my title text looks like now. That's all I wanted to adjust for my title, but let's keep going through the typography options to see what else is in there. We have the transform option, which lets us change the text to uppercase, lowercase, or make it capitalized, or leave it normal the way we typed it in. There is also the style option for making the text normal or turning it italic or oblique. Then the decoration option for adding a line under, over, or through the text. Finally, there are the options for spacing adjustments, the line height and letter spacing. Okay, those are the options you get under typography. The last option in this section is the title margin bottom. It serves to add more space under the title and, in doing so, separate it from the subtitle. However, this option won't do me much good as I erased my subtitle. I mean, I can increase the value and then get something like this, a much bigger info box, but given that I'm not using a subtitle, I could have achieved this same effect by increasing the bottom info padding. Of course, if you prefer this option, you can fine-tune how much space you'll have under the title text by adjusting the value you put. However, I don't plan to use this, so I'll clear the changed value and move on. And the next thing we have is a new section. This one is dedicated to the info subtitle style, so we can use the options here to adjust how the subtitle will look. As I don't have a subtitle, these options won't do me much good. But if you're using it, you have the subtitle color option if you want to change the color of the subtitle text. It has this familiar color picker. Then there's the subtitle typography, which contains all the same options that we saw with the title typography, so they should be familiar as well. Alright, with that we covered all the style options you get with the Image Hotspots block. And before that we went over the content options. That leaves us with one last tab, Advanced. The options here are something you get with every one of the key blocks for Gutenberg, and they serve to set how an individual block will look and act on the page. For example, there are responsiveness and motion effect settings here. While these options are undoubtedly useful as they can help you adjust the block positioning, background, border, and more, they affect blocks as a whole. They aren't specific to this particular block, so we won't be covering them in this tutorial. And that brings us to the end of this video. My Image Hotspots element is done. We've gone over all the block options that allowed us to create it, and this is the design I was working towards. I have 5 pins with a holder background to make them more visible and text explaining those areas of the image. Since I'm done, let me hit update to save my work. Now, this element I made showcases just one possible design solution for the Image Hotspots block. You can find it and many others on the page dedicated to this block. This one. The first example here is the one I chose to copy in this tutorial, and I used it to go through the options with you. Now that you know how the block works, what options it has, and how to use them, you can easily recreate any of the designs shown here. Of course, you can create something entirely unique. Ultimately, this is a very versatile block that can be useful in so many different contexts and places. To finish up, we hope you found this tutorial on the Image Hotspots block useful. If you have any questions after watching this video, or comments or suggestions you'd like to make, please drop us a line in the comments section below. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and be the first to learn about any new tutorials and theme guides. Thank you for watching.